Hey guys, Brass Facts here. PDWs are back in vogue, baby. With multiple gun tubers releasing some kind of PDW content, Hop is trying out a PDW, and even Admin Results is taking a stab at it. I, of course, as the preacher of the Church of the PDW, accept all my new children, regardless of past beliefs and sins against the Church. However, there are still many that don't believe in the light of the compact PDW. I got a full video over here if you want a detailed rundown on why I think compact PDWs are actually kind of one of the major food groups for a prepared citizen. I want to focus on something that I really haven't all that much, the performance aspect. I think everyone can tell a PDW makes them a better shooter than a handgun, but the doubt really comes in when we talk with how much. Because that's all we're really getting over pistol at the end of the day. It's not full auto, and it's the same performance, it's the same bullet out of the same barrel length, so performance is really actually all that we have. So I've been shooting a PDW for the better part on and off of a year in match-style environments, most of which were designed for other weapon types. And I kind of wanted to see how PDWs compare against both pistol and its larger brethren, the rifle. So let's get into it. The first match I did was a pistol match set up by Tactical Ned Flanders. It was a very tame USPSA-style handgun match, with the furthest target being barely over 20 yards and the vast majority of targets within 10 yards. We shot it both with a PDW and a handgun to get a good side-by-side feel. And while there were certain moments where the PDW shone, namely clearing plates at about 25 yards, which you can do more or less as fast as you can clear them at 7 yards with a PDW, while that is absolutely not true with a handgun, overall it was surprisingly cumbersome to use a PDW at such a close range. Targets were really close, and there was a good bit of leaning, pivoting, all of which favored the much nimbler handgun. Really, at no point did the PDW feel good here. And in fact, one of the stages had the handgun win out. Yet despite this, the PDW consistently put up better scores and hit factor, and the end result was the PDW won the match consistently for all three PDWs used. The second match I actually went out of town for, Moon's Out 24, a night vision match hosted by Forgotten Weapons, all under night vision. While some people brought some seriously scuffed setups, props to them, remember Lever Gun Man? Overall, this was a rifle-centric match with high round count stages, several of which were over 90 rounds. I ran the B&T TP9, which is a really small PDW, but then you shove the massive Magnum Dong suppressor on it, and it's like PCC sized. Not even kind of PDW sized, but whatever. Technically, you can take the suppressor off. I just left it on because it was cool. If you want full match details, check out the video I did on it. I'll probably forget to link it, but yeah, whatever. From the perspective of a PDW in a rifle setting, it did very well. I scored 20th out of 110. The largest boon here was, in fact, just the TP9 design. I had a real optic with a real laser setup, which is not a given for most PDWs. A lot of them are going to have to deal with some serious compromises to get a good passive aiming setup, a laser illuminator, without just ruining the setup for its 99% use case not under night vision. If I may offer some excuses for my performance, I think that my TP9 suppressor is developing a bit of an issue where it tends to unratchet itself by one or two settings over the course of a magazine, which causes huge POI shifts. Look at those random rounds that are just zipping way off target. This was a major issue on the long range stage where I had to take a lot of makeup shots, and then a second long range stage called the Oak Course where I racked up several penalties because I didn't realize this was a suppressor issue until much later. Basically, I would miss these required shots and, well, add a lot of time to my time. If you remove those penalties on the Oak Course only, that would have put me in 7th place alone. An interesting sidebar, semi-relevant PDW benefit, I was traveling with Ian, Kit Badger, Hop, and Luke, and I had this cool thing where all of my gear fit in this little small itty-bitty travel pistol case, which then also fit into my check bag, while everyone else had to deal with these giant rifle cases. So, technically a PDW benefit in all things considered. Real quick, interlude, venture surplus ad break. Before you click off, Black Friday deals. Let's thunder run it. Up to 50% off and 10% off of that if you include my discount code, the aptly named Brass Goblin discount code down in the description. 10% off, up to 60% off. A couple things that stick out. Camo net, something I actually personally keep in my ruck, useful for impromptu hides or hiding of gear or the person on the spot. Taps, y'all better eat this one up judging by the comment section of that T-Rex Arms Traps video. USGI Ass Pack, useful for holding stuff, even more useful as an impromptu seat. USGI Entrenching Tool, my go-to melee weapon of choice, can also be used in a pinch to dig a hole, most likely to cover up the turd you just dropped. And of course, so much more. Go to Venture Surplus, check it out. Chances are you won't be disappointed. That place has a ton of products that kind of can fill out your preparedness or just generic use cases. And right now you can get a shitload off because it's Black Friday right now. After that, which was in March, we did a number of kind of half matches that I'll just summarize. PDWs kept up with the rifles just fine, roughly speaking until about 150 yards, at which point performance, at least ballistic performance, really begins to become an issue, especially since most PDWs are not the most accurate thing, and you begin to kind of really rack up some misses at that range. Within 150 yards, and I'd say about 50 yards and in, the gap basically closes to nothing compared to other rifles, and you're really outperforming a handgun consistently over and over. Even when I was on the top of my game with my handgun, I could barely keep up with the PDW, and the PDW was just so much easier. Recently, Hop came out for a trip, and he brought a PDW. Oh my god, we did it. Granted, he probably bought one of the worst PDWs on the market right now, a Ruger LC Charger in 5.7, but baby steps, right?
Hop, what do you have here today? What fucking PDW abomination? Why is the sun just ruining all my shots? Wow, that's horrific.
It's not great. By the way, do you know the casings on 5.7s are all lubed from the factory? I didn't. Anyways, me, Hop, Rose Precision, Tactical Ned Flanders all ran a handgun, PDW, and a rifle through this course of fire. I'm going to throw out the first stage here because fate aligned and everyone's guns didn't work, and I went face first into a target. This was also a very interesting match in the sense that this was probably the most out of practice I've been in a very, very long time across the board, but especially with handgun, right? Because handgun skills atrophy really fast. Anyways, the first of the two stages was sort of a hit factor, burn it the fuck down stage. Pure speed and your ability to shoot on the move. No hard targets, no range targets, you're just shooting. You'd think it'd favor the handgun here for the aforementioned maneuverability reasons, but once again, while it feels better for the handgun, in practice the PDW and rifle performed consistently better, much like the first match, by a pretty large degree here, actually. If I didn't mess up the reload on the 365 Flux, I would have essentially scored and timed exactly the same as the rifle. Pistol here, for me personally, was about 1/3 slower than the rifle with almost identical point scoring. The second stage had a long-range component that we'll call an easy 75-yard reduced steel size target. So much smack was being talked about handgun skill before we led up to this, only for basically everyone to kind of shit it here. Almost no one hit the target clean, and the fastest times here took about 3 to 4 shots to clear that target, and the worst case scenarios were people just couldn't do it at all. 100% misses and basically timed out. I did okay with the handgun right up until I just forgot to engage one of the Sicario execution targets, so damn, that really killed my score there. As soon as we throw stock on a handgun or run a rifle here, boom, instantaneous skill acquired. Everyone that brought a PDW instantly cleared that 75-yard target, and as such, performance was just significantly better here than the handgun every single time, and virtually indistinguishable from the rifle. One other aspect I'd like to talk about is our budget Mr. Beast here. Actually, he's shooting guns, and so this is kind of the better version of it, especially with all the allegations going on. But anyway, as you can see, he's hurt, he can't use both of his hands, so he had to shoot everything one hand. He did a stage with handgun only, so strong hand only, and then he did a second stage where he used the PDW, but, obviously he can't support it, so he's just pushing the stock into his shoulder and then kind of shooting it one-handed. He would have scored a competitive time if he didn't have to, spend forever on the reload, which is much harder when you're missing an entire arm. Handguns being shot one-handed, really hard to shoot. A PDW pressed up against your shoulder one-handed, surprisingly easy. And that's a thing we need to consider in quote-unquote gunfights or real-life scenarios. You may be hurt or your arm may take a round. In fact, that's one of the most likely things to happen is that your support hand takes a round because it's the first thing everyone gravitates towards shooting in self-defense scenarios.
Nova, how's the first stage going? Did you do all right? You up to expectations? Yeah, okay, so we were questioning if fucking look at the camera!
Alright, one final aspect. Not really a PDW rifle versus pistol thing, but I think it's germane to the performance aspect. Ben, the guy that makes and designs the Flux and 365 Raider and the Flux 365, actually competes sometime, and he is fast and accurate. I think it's the fact that he refuses to put on a fucking shirt. You could argue he's biased, but if bias can suddenly make me perform at his level, sign me the fuck up for some bias. And on top of that, dude owns a company, and while we could make jokes about how he's probably doing nothing over there because they're never in stock, I know for a fact he works more than the average dude, and I know he doesn't train nearly as much as the people he shoots against. Despite this, him and his 365 Flux is tearing it up on the competition circuit, with GM level performance against fully fledged turbo-tuned PCC abominations of nature. So much so that they actually tried to ban him, citing that the Flux Raider didn't count as a PCC or something. Yeah, I don't know. I think to a degree this does seem to indicate once you get over the initial learning hump, with not too much effort, you can get to a pretty high skill level with compact PDWs. And if what Ben is telling me is true, there does seem to be a competitive edge there to running a more compact maneuverable firearm, even in something that wouldn't be considered CQB, simply due to the recoil impulse speed and a number of other factors. I think I'm going to touch on more on that in the 365 Flux review, but yeah, it's an interesting thought. So summing up what I found here real quick. At close range styles of courses of fire, the PDW versus the pistol is still going to go towards the PDW, but that translated to quote-unquote real-world settings, up close, I think the edge still goes to the handgun due to deployment time, speed, especially when we consider awkward positions. However, despite the very scrunched form factor of compact PDWs, ultimately their performance at about 150 yards and in, shooting performance was comparable to a rifle, not a handgun. While pistols on their absolute A-game could hang with PDW performance, maybe, the PDW held on to that performance when skilled atrophied, circumstances changed, and especially in circumstances with blind stages. And when on their A-game, PDWs absolutely performed within percentage points of rifle level, performance. We also incidentally figured out, obviously I guess, that the PDW works quite effectively compared to its overall skill ceiling compared to a handgun when being used one-handed. This doesn't necessarily always mean that you have to be wounded in action to have this scenario occur, but I don't know, maybe you're holding a bebe, or you're doing something else like, I don't know, driving a car, or whatever. I mean, use your imagination. The ability to continue to use the gun effectively, even one-handed, is something that we don't want to forget. One final sidebar that I didn't touch on at all so far, compact PDWs have a significant ammo capacity advantage over handguns with purpose-built, reliable magazines, while handguns are typically limited to OEM sub-20 round magazines, and all the magazines above that are kind of weird and not typically something you'd carry. Anyways, that's it. Not going to deep dive into the conclusion here. I think the results speak for themselves. It's still absolutely a hefty investment to go down the PDW route, only to end up with 9mm out of a handgun barrel. I get that. But today I wanted to add some extra anecdotes to the table about what exactly a compact PDW brings to the table in terms of raw shooting performance. Okay, see you guys later.
He is very content with this.
It feels pretty good. Oh my gosh, look.
Like, don't stop.
Woo.
Here, you need a cleaner eye booger. Left eye.
Booger?
Left eye.
You got boogers?
Yeah.
Are you a booger?